Outlast and the Whistleblower DLC isn't just a horror game. It's a story of torture, mind control, and corporate nightmares, based on real government experiments. If you think Outlast is just jump scares, you haven't heard the full story. So grab your magnifying glass because we're about to dive deep into the lore and characters of Outlast and the Whistleblower DLC and unravel the tragic tale that connects them all. Welcome to the Lorpatory. There's a place they don't talk about in Colorado, hidden behind locked gates and barbed wire, buried in paperwork and corporate lies. Mount Massive Asylum. Officially, it's abandoned, but in truth, it's been a slaughterhouse for the human mind, where science becomes ritual, where profit was carved from pain. The horrors inside aren't supernatural. They were born in hell. They were built in cold clinical labs under fluorescent lights, by men in lab coats funded by shadow corporations. Today, we're diving into the full story behind Outlast and the Whistleblower. Every twisted experiment, every patient, every monster, and how it all connects to something horrifyingly real. Project MK Ultra, the CIA's real-life mind control program. So grab your camcorder, but whatever you do, don't stop recording. Mount Massive Asylum sits buried in the mountains of Colorado. Originally opened in the 1900s and shut down in the 1970s, the facility was quietly reactivated by the Murkoff Corporation under the guise of psychiatric care. But this was no hospital. It was a front for experiments that echoed the darkest chapters of American history, namely the infamous CIA operation, Project MK Ultra. Between the 1950s and 70s, MK Ultra conducted covert experiments using LSD, electroshock therapy, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. Murkoff took that research and pushed it further. MK Ultra wasn't just a footnote in history. It was a decades-long government-sanctioned descent into the psychological warfare, funded by the CIA and run under total secrecy. The project dosed unsuspecting civilians with LSD, subjected them to hypnosis, and erased memories through trauma. What Murkoff did was echo that legacy, turning outdated torture methods into corporate R&D. Except here, the goal wasn't just control, it was transformation. The morphogenic engine didn't just study the mind, it tried to reprogram it. With the creation of the morphogenic engine, Murkoff sought to unlock human potential by controlling dreams. The goal? To create controllable psychic weapons. The result? A monster. The Walrider. And behind the Walrider stood Dr. Rudolf Wernicke. Dr. Wernicke is one of the key architects of this nightmare, a former Nazi scientist brought to America during Operation Paperclip. Just like the many real-life figures from MK Ultra's early days, Wernicke was obsessed with human consciousness and the nature of life after death. In Outlast, he is revealed to be over 100 years old, kept alive by advanced life support systems beneath the asylum.
I know. I am supposed to be dead. No such luck. I am older than sin, but somehow the only one left. Because of Billy. He takes care of me. He may think I'm his father. He certainly loves me, the poor idiot.
Unlike the other Murkoff staff, Wernicke isn't simply a monster in a lab coat. He's the mind behind the morphogenic engine, a man who believes that suffering leads to transcendence, that if enough pain is inflicted, the human spirit can evolve. He didn't just design the system, he guided it. And even after his body began to fail, Murkoff kept him alive to maintain the Walrider project. But perhaps the most disturbing detail, Dr. Wernicke is officially listed as deceased. According to the Murkoff internal records, Wernicke died decades earlier in a lab accident. A convenient cover story. In truth, the old man faked his own death, retreating underground to continue his research in secrecy. A ghost in the machine, pulling strings long after the world believed he was gone. His survival wasn't just a lie, it was a necessity for Murkoff. Without Wernicke, there would be no Walrider. There would be no nightmare. But the story doesn't begin with the Walrider. It begins with an email. We step into the shoes of Miles Upshur, an investigative journalist working for an independent outlet. He receives an encrypted email about illegal activity inside Mount Massive. He wastes no time in grabbing his camcorder and heading to the facility. As he drives up the winding mountain roads, thunder roars overhead. The gates are open, but something's wrong. The front entrance is abandoned, lights flicker, and the air is suffocating with unease. Inside, it's chaos. Blood smeared across walls, empty wheelchairs, gutted corpses, disfigured figures crawl and scream in the shadows. Within minutes, Miles is violently thrown by a monstrous figure, Chris Walker. A once decorated Marine, Walker became a variant after being subjected to the morphogenic engine. He tore out his own nose and lips. Now, he roams the halls in search of intruders and prey. From here, the rules of survival change. You have no weapons. You can't fight. Only hide, run, and record. Your camcorder, your lifeline, offers night vision and proof of everything you witness. But it's not just for survival. It's the only way to uncover the truth. Shortly after being thrown, Miles encounters Father Martin, one of the most enigmatic and unsettling figures in the game. Once a real priest, Martin believes the Walrider is not a technological construct, but a divine messenger. He calls Miles the Apostle, a prophet sent to deliver its message to the world. Martin doesn't try to kill you. Instead, he helps you at a cost. He wants you to witness everything, believing only through pain and suffering can the world understand the Walrider's purpose. As you traverse blood-stained hallways, you're pursued by the twins, naked, mute, cannibalistic men who calmly debate how best to dismember you.
Maybe Father Martin's man.
Maybe.
He looks nervous.
I would like to kill him.
As would I.
The preacher asked us not to.
It would be impolite.
Not here.
We give him a running start.
There's an idea.
And when we kill him slow.
Such patience.
I want his tongue. And liver.
They are yours.
They are living examples of what happens when the human mind is fractured by the engine. But then, there's Richard Traeger. Dr. Richard Traeger is one of the most terrifying figures you'll encounter in Mount Massive. Not because he's the strongest or the most supernatural, but because he represents the absolute worst of Murkoff's corporate culture. Traeger was once a Murkoff executive, someone high up in the hierarchy who fully bought into the company's brutal methods. But after being exposed to the morphogenic engine himself, his mind fractured. Yet, unlike many other variants, he retained his intelligence and sadistic charm. You meet Traeger after being sedated while trying to access the security systems. He straps you to a wheelchair and takes you on a tour of his wing, a hellish, blood-sickled section of the asylum filled with dismembered bodies and improvised surgical stations. Traeger talks with the charisma of a salesman, but operates with the cruelty of a butcher. He speaks calmly as he mutilates his victims.
You want a little attention? Perfectly understandable. I'm here for you. I'll give you very special attention.
Using garden shears to amputate fingers, under the delusion that he's performing necessary medical care. In his twisted mind, he's still a doctor helping patients feel better. During your escape, Traeger becomes a relentless pursuer. He chases you through the operating rooms, the screaming halls, flickering corridors, his voice always echoing somewhere just behind. His death is as brutal as his methods. After luring him into an elevator, you trigger a malfunction, crushing his body between floors. It's one of the game's most cathartic and disturbing moments, watching a man who embodied institutional evil finally fall. But even after his death, his legacy remains in the recordings, in the mutilated bodies, and in the echoes of his voice down the halls. Traeger wasn't just a man. He was what Murkoff allowed to grow. And in Mount Massive, he wasn't the only one. And now here you are, Miles, having his fingers ripped off with garden shears. Where does he go now? Father Martin guides him deeper into the asylum, urging him to reach the truth.
You're beginning to understand, but not yet. Even Abraham had to cast his eyes to the ground. But soon, this way, revelation is at hand.
To follow the blood, which can be seen written on the walls of the asylum. A journey that eventually leads to a chapel where he burns himself alive.
Fix the elevator. It will take you to freedom. We will all of us be free. Now, my son.
Calling it his final sacrifice. Eventually, you reach the underground research labs where everything begins to become clear. The Walrider isn't a ghost. It's not a demon. It's a swarm of nanomachines, programmable particles capable of interacting with the physical world. But it needs a host, a mind powerful enough to control it. That host is Billy Hope, a young mentally ill patient chosen for his susceptibility to dream therapy. His nightmares, pain, and broken psyche became the perfect breeding ground for the Walrider. Billy Hope wasn't chosen for greatness. He was chosen for vulnerability, young, mentally unstable, and highly receptive to suggestion. He was the perfect test subject. The dream therapy induced lucid states of terror, breaking him down into a subconscious fracture, and the Walrider emerged. Not as a monster in the traditional sense, but as a weaponized will, a psychic echo wrapped in nanomachines, feeding on trauma and amplifying fear. You proceed to locate Billy's life support and shut it down, watching his body convulse as he dies. But just as you think it's over, Murkoff's armed response team arrives, led by Dr. Wernicke, and guns him down. But Billy the host is dead. The Walrider enters Miles. He becomes the new host. But death is no release. The Walrider.
You have become the host. What is that thing?
Reborn in Miles. But Miles was never the beginning, and he wasn't the end. Whistleblower is the prequel and the sequel. It's the missing puzzle piece. It begins as Waylon Park, a software engineer working inside Mount Massive. He wasn't just another employee. He was the one who triggered the events of Outlast. After months of watching patients be tortured, mutilated, and driven insane, Waylon secretly contacts Miles. That email, the one that brought him here, it was his. The problem is Waylon was caught. The man who catches him, Jeremy Blair, one of Murkoff's senior executives. Bear plays a critical role in Wayland's torment. After catching him, he orders Wayland committed as a patient.
I'm afraid we're going to have you committed. Mr. Park, will you willingly submit to forced confinement? Did you hear that, Agent?
He said yes, Mr. Blair.
Great. Oh, and did I just hear Mr. Wayland Park volunteer for the morphogenic engine program?
That's what I heard, Mr. Blair.
That was brave indeed, Wayland.
Subjected to the same horrors he tried to expose. And throughout the DLC, Blair becomes a reoccurring threat, manipulating events from the shadows, hunting Wayland with deadly intent, taunting him, tracking him, trying to silence him permanently. But then, the Wall Rider breaks free. Now Wayland has no weapons, no training, just a will to survive. But this is where things get interesting. Outlast and Whistleblower don't just connect, they overlap. Many of the events in both stories occur simultaneously. For example, in Whistleblower, Wayland passes through several key areas that Miles explores later, like the administration block, now even more damage from prior events. You also hear echoes of Miles' journey, distant screams, security alarms, and blood trails that mark where he's already been. There's a moment when Wayland glimpses the aftermath of Miles' elevator encounter with Dr. Traeger, the wreckage and blood still fresh. And later, he sees Murkoff soldiers being picked off one by an unseen force we know to be Miles possessed by the Wall Rider. In one particularly eerie moment, Wayland encounters a familiar message being painted on the wall. Follow the blood. It's Father Martin at work, seen briefly mid-brushstroke, reinforcing that the same deranged prophet guiding Miles is simultaneously walking his own path. His journey takes him through the collapsed facility, encountering both twisted variants and Murkoff cleanup crews. Among the threats is Frank Manera, a cannibal who believes eating flesh will keep him from infection. He speaks in riddles and screams. He mutilates and consumes. But he's not the worst. That honor goes to Eddie Gluskin, known as the Groom. Gluskin is obsessed with creating the perfect marriage. He captures male survivors and performs makeshift surgeries, castrations, mutilations, attempting to turn them into his brides. He's charming, polite, insane. Wayland survives. Barely. He kills Gluskin in a warehouse accident and reaches the asylum's exit. Wayland Park wasn't just a hero. He was complicit. For months, he helped write the code that allowed the morphogenic engine to map and manipulate the brain, watching patients scream in agony while monitors recorded data. The email to Miles? It wasn't just a warning. It was a confession, his only shot at redemption. Seizing his chance, right before Wayland escapes, he sees Miles as the Wall Rider. The story comes full circle, and then Wayland escapes in the same car that Miles drove in the beginning of Outlast, with evidence in hand. Before uploading the footage that could destroy Murkoff, Wayland meets a man who warns him. Releasing the footage means death. Murkoff will come for him, his family, anyone connected, anyone he loves. But Wayland doesn't hesitate. With trembling hands, he sends the file out into the world, a moment of terrifying courage, and a promise. Murkoff's crimes won't stay hidden forever. Outlast is more than just horror. It's a mirror reflecting real atrocities. Miles enters as a reporter and becomes the monster. Wayland starts as an engineer and becomes the whistleblower. Billy, a victim turned weapon. Father Martin confuses science for salvation. Dr. Wernicke fakes death to create God. It's a story about how science, when driven by power, can become religion, how corporations strip away humanity for control, and how pain becomes prophecy. Well, that's the full disturbing story of Outlast and the Whistleblower DLC. A tale rooted in real history, imagined nightmares, and the terrifying ways science can betray humanity. If this breakdown chilled you, drop a like, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments what moment in Outlast stuck with you the most. And remember, keep your batteries charged and keep the camera rolling.